Good afternoon once again, everyone. Let me start our summation speech by pointing out certain arguments that the opposing side weren't able to fully grasp or understand. First is their whole point is to amend the Constitution. They keep on insisting that they would amend or remove the existing Constitution on the freedom from nuclear weapons, but they weren't able to give information how to amend the Constitution. And with that, I think that's very, they lack the conviction of telling us that it is plausible for us to amend this Constitution, because first of all, it's not just expensive for us to acquire these nuclear weapons, but it's also expensive for us to remove or amend the Constitution. If you have any plans, if any nation has the plan to amend the Constitution, would you just resort to give money or take out money, millions of money just to amend one Constitution? Why not just amend the whole Constitution, revise it to become it new? So that's another point that they weren't able to properly point out. Next is that they did not admit the fact that if we were to remove the Constitution, that eventually we would possess these nuclear weapons, and that I really believe of the disadvantages that these nuclear weapons can put in our country, especially the detrimental disadvantages, the perpetual disadvantages that it could pose in our country, especially environmental, and the long-lasting effect that this weapon can put in our country if we were to be bombed by nuclear weapons. Next, the deterrence theory is not that reliable, because deterrence theory is when a certain nation possesses these nuclear weapons, that they are perceived as powerful, that their economy is perceived as strong, and that they cannot be messed with. And I disagree with that. Look at nations such as Pakistan and North Korea. They have nuclear weapons, but look at their economy on the flip side. Do they have a good economy, ladies and gentlemen? No. Please imagine Pakistan. Imagine what Pakistan is right now and North Korea right now. They give priority to the development of these nuclear weapons, but there is nothing left for their citizens. Do we want our country to experience that, ladies and gentlemen? Do we want that? No, we don't want that. We don't want to prioritize our military defense, or specifically the development of nuclear weapons, just to leave our children hungry, to leave our citizens uneducated, because the budget allocated for these nuclear weapons to be allocated is not enough. Moving on, the ICRC and the Red Crescent movement had been calling for a ban on nuclear weapons since 1945 and welcomed the adoption of the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So I disagree when they say that the IHL does not prohibit the ban of nuclear weapons, because the ICRC and Red Crescent had been calling for a ban of these nuclear weapons, because the very essence of IHL is to seek for humanitarian reasons to limit the effects of armed conflict. Would you agree with me, if we possess these nuclear weapons, that we could limit the armed conflict, ladies and gentlemen? No, it would attract more danger to our nation. I really do acknowledge the threat given to us specifically by China. And for us to possess nuclear weapons in order for us to stand our ground is not the answer. It is not the way to proceed, because our government has allocated a budget to the Department of National Defense to further enhance and develop our current of what we have in our military defense. But nuclear weapons, it is not the answer. It goes against our Constitution. It is written in the Constitution, as said in the affirmative side, it is the law of the land. It is superior over other laws, so that if we pursue the possession of these nuclear weapons, it would just not take a lot of money or a lot of time, but it also go against the principles and the integrity of our country. Moving on, I have a list of the Department of Budget and Management as to where they will put the allocated budget for the Department of National Defense. They will give it to the Philippine Army, to the General Headquarters, Philippine Navy, Philippine Air Force, Veterans Medical Center, and whatsoever. And in this list, there is no allocation for nuclear weapons. Why? Because we don't don't need it. It's not necessary, it's not beneficial, and it's not practicable at all for us to possess these nuclear weapons, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are trying to say here is that when you want to remove or amend a constitution in our Philippine constitution in the country, it would eventually lead for us to possess our desires of why we want to remove the constitution, specifically the freedom from nuclear weapons. If we were to remove the constitution on our freedom from nuclear weapons, eventually our government leaders would have the desire, would be too ambitious enough to possess these nuclear weapons. Is it feasible? Is it practicable? No. We do not have the budget. It poses great threat and danger to our country, and it is not necessary, because if we face any conflict with other countries, we can always resort to peaceful negotiations and diplomatic relationships to other countries. Why would we resort to being violent with other countries if they threaten us? Ladies and gentlemen, do not add fire to fire. Am I right? If you add fire, if you threaten those who already threaten us and say, we also have nuclear weapons just much as you. So would you agree that our safety is promised and assured because we have nuclear weapons? No. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to impart to all of you that our safety is not promised with us being violent towards other people. We cannot attain peace if we did not start peace within ourselves. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Conapio. Now to cap the debate, may we call on Mr. Reynaldo J. Ali III. You have 7 minutes for your summation or rebuttal speech.
To the honorable members of the judges, Mr. Moderator, fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We have been debating about the proposition, let it be resolved, that the policy on the freedom from nuclear weapons be removed from the Philippine Constitution. We, the affirmative side, have successfully laid down our arguments that the policy on the freedom from nuclear weapons be removed from the Philippine Constitution is necessary, beneficial, and practicable. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to divulge you with a carefully constructed summation speech. Our first speaker has successfully emphasized that our status quo manifests inefficiency, given that we are currently in the midst of a territorial dispute, mainly against China. Data from the armed forces show that the Philippines has around 125,000 active personnel, 180,000 reserves, 672 armored fighting vehicles, 323 armaments, 0 rocket artilleries, 0 self-propelled guns, 219 total aircrafts, 12 fighter planes, 127 helicopters, 129 naval ships, 0 aircraft carriers, 0 destroyers, 0 submarines, and 0 nuclear weapons for the entire country. All of which ranges from 0 to 5% only when compared to China, Russia, or the USA. Removing the policy in Articles 2, Section 8 is necessary so that the Philippines can be open to the idea of acquiring or developing nuclear weapons in times of need. Our second speaker has successfully discussed that the Philippines is working hand in hand with other countries. For example, the US with a mutual defense treaty. If the Philippines amends its constitution, it will maximize its potential to be protected by its allied countries so that it will stop living in fear of its adversaries' present or future conventional strength. With the amendment of our constitution, any threats or aggressive actions towards our country will be deterred. Both deterrence and security in the 21st century. For small states, in this context, the Philippines, even a small nuclear deterrent can be very beneficial to our national interests. Theory of International Politics by Kenneth Waltz, an American political scientist, said that a nation must continuously improve its strength to not be left behind and be vulnerable to strong forces. Thus, the amendment of the policy in the Philippine Constitution. Our third speaker has delivered to you our final grounds why removing the ban is practicable, and it is stated at Article 7 of the Philippine Constitution. Second, removing the ban does not violate the prohibition of nuclear weapons because we didn't ratify it. And nowhere in the international humanitarian law is it stated that all nuclear weapons should be banned across the globe. Rather, there are regulations. And lastly, removing the ban has the same process and expenses with ratifying the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you all of the things that the negative side has committed to be false. The first speaker of the negative side failed to support her arguments regarding the budget of the Defense Committee and said that at the moment the Philippines is improving its military power. Also, she said that it is inconsistent with her given information that she stated that it's been 71 years ago since the bombing of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima, when in fact the bombing happened on August 6 and 9, 1945, and it was 74 years to date and not 71 years. The second speaker said or agreed that the amendment on the Constitution that it would cause the deaths of civilians, while in fact the amendment of the 1987 Constitution, specifically Article 2, Section 8, does not have immediate negative effects to the country. And the third speaker said that the Philippines signed a non-proliferation, the Treaty on the Prohibition of the Nuclear Weapons. However, we failed to ratify it. The said treaty needs at least 50 votes of participatory states in order to be put in force. As stated in the first pillar, it should be specific to the non-proliferation pillar, which aims for total elimination of nuclear armaments. But when in fact, after the World War, the present, there is still existing 14,000 nuclear weapons in the world, and the TPNW failed its goal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you the committed fallacies by the negative side. The first speaker of the negative side has committed strawman fallacy twice, instilling that we want to inquire nuclear weapons, but we are just only proposing to remove Article 2, Section 8 of the Constitution. She also committed a red herring fallacy during the interpellation, assuming that we are comparing the Philippines to Russia, thus diverting the topic. She mentioned about the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombing incident when in fact it happened 74 years ago, not 74 years, which she mentioned. She kept saying we all know, which had her into committing a fallacy of quantity, or can also be considered this as an ad populum fallacy. She also mentioned that none of the countries can attack Philippines, which is an assumption non probata. The second speaker has committed an ad misericordiam or appeal to pity fallacy during his speech, using a specific survivor or victim to present the effects of the Hiroshima bombing, and committing a red herring fallacy, as well as diverting the topic during interpellation. Globalization is obviously far from the topic or the context. The third speaker of the negative side has committed a fallacy of appeal to authority, using Delphine Lorenza, who is not a nuclear expert, during his speech. To the negative side, esteemed Board of Judges, humble moderator, audiences, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to stressfully reiterate that we want to remove the ban on the nuclear weapons because we want to maximize the protection of our country. And in order for us to succeed in doing that, we have to look at nuclear weapons in a positive perspective. We never said that we should definitely store nuclear weapons and that we should use all of these nuclear weapons the moment the ban has been lifted. Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Thank you. Good afternoon.
That was the summation speech from the affirmative side. Ladies and gentlemen, as part